Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We started last week, chapter 2 of book 4, which is the last book of the Spirit's book. It is Hopes and Consolations, and it has only 2 chapters. Actual or present days joys and sorrows and future joys and sorrows. We last week started with intuition, with nothingness, future life. Today we are going to start on question 960, intuition of future joys and sorrows. Philip, can you read for us?
Certainly. From where does the belief in future pains and rewards originate? It is an intuition of the reality imparted to each person by the Spirit incarnated in them. Know this well. It is not in vain that this inner voice speaks to you, and you are wrong in ignoring it. If you've thought of this enough and more often, you would be better off.
So again, we talked here about what we bring in from our previous incarnations. We as eternal spirits, everything that we have learned, everything that we have lived is stored in our spirit and transmitted to our spirit, and some of it is brought to the physical body. So the intuition is there in our subconscious. So we have an intuition of God, as we discussed in the past. We have an intuition of the spiritual world and an intuition of what we have gone through in the past. So the belief in future joys and sorrows is something that comes with us, right? We have gone through it. We have experienced joys and we have experienced sorrows, not only in this present life, but also in previous existences. So we have some sort of recollection. And what the Spirits is telling us here is that we are wrong in ignoring it. That if we think of this enough, it will be enough and more, we would be better off, that this would help us because it will help us prepare better for the future. So the idea here is that we bring this with us. We should try to use it for our benefit. Okay? (961).
What is the predominant feeling when one is dying? Is it doubt, fear, or hope? Doubt for the skeptical, fear for the guilty, and hope for the virtuous.
Very short question and answer, but very interesting, right? Because Kardec is asking the person who is dying, does he has doubt, fear, or hope? And the Spirit's answer, it could be one or the other or the third one, depending on how you face the survival of the soul. So the skeptical, when we are in a process of the closing to the death of the physical body, of course, the skeptical do not know where we are going, or if life continues, and so he or she is full of doubts, uncertainties, and with that comes fear, because we always fear the unknown. Now, the guilty person, again, he can be in doubt if something is, if they are going to have to face the consequences of their actions, because if they are feeling guilty, they know that they did something wrong. So the fear of something else existing will bring them this concern, right? So if they believe in life after death, and again, we're talking here the different religions that talk about heaven, hell. The Catholic Church talks about purgatory. The Protestants erase the concept of purgatory because for them, in a way to eliminate the creation of purgatory was a way for the Catholic Church to collect money, right? Because they would tell people they were going to stay in purgatory, and if they could buy their way out of purgatory, they could go to heaven. That was the reason behind the creation of purgatory. So when the Protestant movement started, of course, they eliminated purgatory because one of their fights was against the power abuse of financial abuses of the church at the time of Martin Luther. So again, the guilty that believes that there is a hell or a purgatory will fear going to those places. The same way the spiritists that feel guilty fear going to the lower zones, right? Which is our version of purgatory, right? Uh, but which is true, right? We understand that you are going to go where your vibrations takes you, right? So if you are immersed in guilty, you are going to end up in the lower zones because the lower zones is the place for those that are lost, immersed in guilty, immersed in regrets. It's not the infernal zones, which are more organized places in the lower zones that have leaders and have like the one we study Gregorio in the book Liberation. But you know, you read the book, and if you're feeling guilty, you know, you are going to fear ending up in a place like that. And of course, those that have the clean conscience of having lived a good life. And again, here, when we study this in Spiritism, we have to understand that our only objective here in this incarnation is to improve. So we are imperfect spirits. We will continue to be imperfect spirits. We will continue to have a lot of imperfections throughout this life. But the clean conscience that we've made the effort to improve ourselves, a true spiritist is the one that tries to improve oneself every day, is the reason to give us hope that we'll find a better place in the spiritual world when we leave this physical world. And by knowing and understanding that, then vibrating at a level that will connect us with our protecting spirits will place us in a place that we will find what we were looking for, right? Assistance, hope, guidance, and everything that we need. Again, this after we discarnate, there is always a period of confusion. It's natural, it happens for everybody. But after this period of confusion, if we have done our job in the best possible way for ourselves, and again, we cannot compare ourselves to anyone. We have to compare ourselves with our younger selves. Have we made an effort? Have we improved? Are we better today morally than we were when we were younger? If we can say yes, we are going to find ourselves assisted and helped on our return to the spiritual world. If our answer is no, we still have time. We still can continue working to improve ourselves. The very fact that we are here trying to study, trying to learn, it's a good reason for us to conclude that we are doing our part to improve ourselves. And we have to fight against our regrets, our guilty, because, again, many of the things that we did, we didn't know better. So, again, something that we discussed when we were talking about suicide, right? Knowledge. Knowledge is very important. When we made the mistakes we made, did we have full knowledge of what we were doing? So that's what we have to analyze. A lot of the mistakes we did when we were young, right, were made out of lack of awareness, right? Because we didn't have the knowledge that we have today. We didn't have the experience. So this is our all learning experiences. And we have to consider that some of those are part of our trials in search of improvements of learning. So we, all of us here, we should have hope, because we hesitate in calling ourselves virtuous, right? But we cannot say that we are not making an effort to improve ourselves, because if we were not, we wouldn't be here trying to study, trying to learn more, right? Okay. If anyone has any questions, any comments, please just ask. Okay.
962.
Yes.
How can skeptics exist, considering that the soul imparts the sense of spirituality to all? There are fewer skeptics than you think. Many of those who feigned skepticism during life out of pride are much less skeptical when they die. The quality of our future life depends on our actions. Reason, supported by a sense of justice, tells us that the good and the bad are not mistaken in our ultimate sharing of happiness. God would not allow some people to obtain joy effortlessly, while others obtain it only through much exertion. Our faith in God's justice and goodness, as evidenced by the wisdom of God's laws, forbids us to believe that the good and the bad hold the same place before God. Conversely, there is no doubt that eventually the good are rewarded and the bad atone for the good and evil they have done. From an innate sense of justice, we derive our instinct of future rewards and atonements.
Okay. So first, the question that Kardec asks here is, how can skeptics exist, right? And if we think historically, and we look at the research done today, right? At the time of Kardec is when science was beginning the steps of full separation from church, right? Science was always intrinsically connected with religion and much controlled by religion. And then by the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century, with the French Revolution and other independent movements here in the States and some other places, is when science began to move away from religion, and of course move away to the other extreme, because you go from one extreme where religion prohibits science from finding advancements to science being completely independent, and the first thing they do is to reject the existence of God, right? So there was a strong movement in the time of Kardec, middle of the 19th century, of people refusing to believe in God and refusing to entertain the notions of spiritual life. And Spiritism came to unite science and religion. And if we consider that now, 170 years later, we continue to have skeptics, yes. But if science had their way, like they were trying to convince humanity that God did not exist, we would practically wouldn't have religion nowadays. And what we do have is on average throughout the world, we have 70% or more of people that believe in God or in the spiritual life or in divinity. And here in the United States is more than 80%. So for that, we see that we bring this instinctively with us. So what happens for those that become skeptics? And again, we become skeptics because it's something that has to be made out of choice. We make a choice not to believe that God exists or that this life is all that exists. There is no spiritual life. So, as the Spirit says here, many of those who are skeptics, it's out of pride and out of running away from the impositions of the organized religions, right? The number, it's interesting when you read the last Pew religious research, which is the most serious one that is done in this country, that the number of people that have no religion, but they call themselves spiritual, continues growing. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's getting closer to 10% of the population. So it is why these people are not happy with what organized religions is telling them or teaching them or imposing on them, the God, the dogmas, the rules, but they still believe that there is a spiritual life and that there is a creator, whatever name they want to call it. And again, for us it's Spiritism. We teach about God as the creator, but we do not impose anything. If you are not comfortable with the word God, you can call the creator, you can call whatever you feel comfortable with, right? But then Kardec explains to us that according to Spiritism, according to what the spirits teach us, the quality of our future life depends on our actions. But again, we use reason, right? And reason tells us that good and bad are going to have their rewards according to their actions. If we understand God as being the creator and a perfect being that is all kindness, all justice, all love, of course, the justice of God will not allow some people to obtain joy effortlessly, while others obtain through effort, right? Everyone has the same opportunities and the same rewards and the same atonements for what they did. So if we believe in God's justice and goodness, we have to believe that everything that happens for a reason, that the challenges we are facing have a reason. And the reason could be a trial, which is an opportunity to learn something we don't know, an atonement, which is a consequence of a mistake we made in our past repeatedly, because again, you are going through a trial, you make a mistake, you didn't know better. So there is no atonement for a mistake you make out of learning something. The problem is that when you make a mistake, you know that you made a mistake and you repeat it. So that's when we create the atonement. And the atonement may be related to this present life or may be related to a previous life, right? Again, you smoke your whole life and then you have lung cancer. It's an atonement for the present life. It's something that you knew what you were doing and you caused this harm to yourself. Now, you never smoke, you lived in a life in a healthy environment, not in a polluted city your whole life, and you end up with lung cancer. So there's nothing in this life to explain it theoretically. So it's a consequence of something you did in the past, which in a previous existence, which is, again, it's It's not for us to start finding the causes, because if we don't remember, it's for a reason, but to understand and accept that what we should learn with our trials and atonements is resignation. So when I say on the initial prayers, I talk about active resignation, which is something that Elmo brought to us. Because when we talk about resignation, many people understand it as sitting back and there's nothing I can do against. No, active resignation means you fight against the challenges the best way possible. If you cannot overcome the challenge, then you accept it with resignation. You don't rebel against it. So that's the idea here of learning from an atonement. And if we do that, we resign ourselves to the experience we're going through, because we couldn't fix the issue, we couldn't address the problem. And by the end of this life, we are done with it. So the same person that had lung cancer without any real reason for it goes, seeks treatment, chemotherapy, physiotherapy, radiotherapy, do everything the person can, and still dies from lung cancer. If the person accepted their faith with active resignation, in the end, accepting with the limitations that we are imperfect spirits, but accepted it, then the atonement is over. You go back to the spiritual world, the perispirit or spiritual body is healed, and next incarnation, we are not going to face the issue. Now, the person that smoked the whole life and ends up dying of lung cancer, that person that has harmed their perispirit. So they go to the spiritual world with the perispirit facing the consequences, and they are going to bring it very likely in the future, in a future existence, suffering from asthma and all respiratory illnesses that can come from having damaged the lung. And again, you may not have anything during the present life. I know people that are older know people that smoked their whole life and never had any problem, right? They didn't have any problem in the physical life, but they damaged the physical body, and it's going to manifest in the perispirit and will have a consequence in a future life. Because again, God's law is just. So we face the consequence for our actions. Again, when we talk, because we brought the subject of smoking, right? People that smoke in the beginning of the 20th century, they didn't know that smoke was bad. So their consequences are much less harmful to them than someone that smokes today, when we have all the information and we are aware of the damage it causes. Goes back to knowledge. The more you know, the more responsible you are. And this applies to everything in our lives. And we talked about this a lot. Okay? So now we're going to the intervention of God in rewards and atonements. When we're going to talk about the intervention of God, remember, God creates the natural laws. The natural laws are perfect. So when we go against the natural law, we create a karma, we create a consequence for ourselves. So it's not a punishment, it's not a reward. It's just go with the natural law, we are going to find ourselves in a better place. Go against the natural law, we are going to find ourselves in a more difficult place. God doesn't intervene. God just created the laws. But we're going to go a little bit deeper into God's direct interference, right?
Is God personally concerned with each person? Is God not too great? And are we not too small for each individual to be of any importance to the Creator? God is concerned with all of creation, no matter how small they may be. Nothing is too small or insignificant for God's goodness.
Okay, for us to think of God in this sense that Kardec asked, God being too great and we are too small to be of any importance, first, we don't have a full understanding of God, right? We know that we are all creation of God and that God is present in each one of us and in everything that it was created in the universe and continues to be created and will be created. So God is everywhere, present in all of us, and uh, so nothing is too small or insignificant for God's goodness. Again, we have to try to move away from the concept of God being the old man sitting in a throne with a white beard, right? We have to think of God not as a person. Again, the problem is we try to create God to create God in our image, right? And because of our limitations, we cannot really understand and grasp the concept of a creator that created the whole universe. We cannot even understand the whole universe in terms of its sizes and everything. So for us, it is our understanding should be that there is a creator. The creator created everything and us, everything perfect. We are moving to the direction of the creator as we evolve. But I remember Divaldo saying in one of his lectures, right, that it was easier for him to think about Jesus because Jesus was incarnated here. Jesus is the governor of this planet, and Jesus is a figure that you can relate to. That God, it's very difficult to relate to. So he said, I rather pray to Jesus than pray to God because I know to whom I'm praying to. For God, I don't exactly understand to what I'm praying to. And remember, the first question of the the Spirit's book is what is God, and not who is God, because God is not a who, is a what. Is the creator, the origin of all things. So again, when we pray and ask God for assistance, in reality, we're asking for the spirit benefactors that act in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, through our familiar spirits, our guardian angels. So it's not Jesus directly, it's not God directly, it's through the natural law. We elevate ourselves, we open ourselves for the assistance of our protecting spirits who are there always to help us. They need us to be open to them so they can be able to help us. Okay?
964.
Yes, please.
Is God concerned with each of our actions to reward or punish us? Aren't most of such actions insignificant to God? God's laws apply to all our actions, and if you violate them, it is your fault. When a person violates one of those laws, God does not say, "You have been gluttonous. I will punish you for it." However, God has set a limit. Diseases and even death are the consequences of overstepping that limit. Anytime you are disciplined, it is a result of violating a law. Everything happens that way. All our actions are subject to God's laws. Any wrongdoing on our part, no matter how inconsequential it may seem to us, it is violation of those laws. When we experience the consequences of such violations, we can only blame ourselves, as we are the sole architects of our happiness or misery, as is shown in the following narrative. A father has educated and instructed his child on how to guide himself in life. He hands over a piece of land to him to farm and says, I have given you the practical directions and all the necessary tools for making this land productive and earning a living. I have given you all the instruction needed for understanding those directions. If you follow them, your land will yield abundant harvest and you will be able to rest in your old age. If you do not, it will bear nothing and you will die of hunger. Having said this, he leaves him to his own devices. Is it not true that the land yields crops corresponding to the skill and care invested in the cultivation, and that any mistake or negligence on part of the son has a harmful effect on the harvest? Therefore, the son will be comfortable or poor in his old age, depending on whether he has followed or neglected his father's directions. God is even more farsighted. We have told at every moment whether we are doing right or wrong through the spirits that are sent to guide us, although we do not always listen to them. There is also the difference that if the son wasted his time, he has no opportunity to repair his lapses, while God would always give him the means of correcting his mistakes through new lives.
Okay, thanks, Phil. So, um, again, we go back to God's laws, right? So each of our actions are rewarded or punished according to God's law. So God's law applies to all of our actions. And if we violate any action, is our own responsibility. We are responsible for our actions. We have free will. God does not punish us. That's something that we try always to move away, because this book brings a lot of the concepts that we brought from the Catholic Church in the middle of the 19th century of a God that punishes us. God does not punish us. God created the natural laws. We are the ones that decide to not follow the natural laws. The example they give here, right? We have a physical body. We have to feed our physical body. If we eat too much, we are going to have to face the consequences of eating too much, right? Is it punishment from God, or is it just a consequence of our gluttony, right? It's the consequence of free will. We know we shouldn't be eating that much, and we ate anyway. For those that drink, you know that we have limits where before you start to feel the effects of alcohol, right? For those that get drunk and make mistakes by getting drunk, there are a couple of consequences. First, the responsibility for drinking, and the second, the responsibility for making mistakes out of the consequences of drinking. So everything that happens to us in our lives are opportunities for us to grow morally and intellectually. When we make mistakes and when we insist on those mistakes in this present life, we are going to face the consequences. When we have opportunities to learn and we refuse to learn, the lesson will be more difficult. We always like to compare to a school, right? The system we have for schools, if a student does not apply oneself to study to get the basic grades that they need to move to the next level, they are going to be forced to repeat. Is it the school's fault, or is the children's fault? Again, we're not going to enter into the problems that we have with schools and all the problem. We're talking about an ideal situation. A student does not apply oneself to study hard enough to go to the next to the next grade. They are going to repeat because of their own fault. And again, this is life in the physical world is a copy, a bad copy of life in the spiritual world. Our evolution is based on our achievements. The more we make an effort to improve ourselves, the better we are going to find ourselves as a result of this. So anytime we are facing challenges, these are results of violating God's laws. Kardec gives here the example of a father that gave a piece of land to his son, which is an interesting example, right? You give a land, you teach him how to farm, and give all the directions and necessary tools, and then the land is yours. If he doesn't make an effort, if he doesn't make the land productive, he's going to face the consequences of a barren land. If he makes the effort and make a productive land, he's going to benefit, reap the rewards. Of course, you're going to say, well, but there are the climatic problems, but it doesn't happen every year. It doesn't happen all the time. It will happen from time to time, but the land will be productive. And again, at the time of Kardec, we have to remember that most of the countries were agricultural countries. Nowadays, we are talking about different things, but there is this famous phrase about the grandfather starts the factory, the father transforms it into a big productive factory, and the grandson destroys it, right? Because the grandfather works hard to build it. The father works hard to make it big, and the grandson is just benefiting from the wealth that the father and the grandfather built, and they are just wasting it. Again, it doesn't apply to all the cases, not true always, but we've seen many of these cases, right? We see many of this when we read about the billionaires or the millionaires and billionaires of the beginning of the 20th century, of the Industrial Revolution. Where are their heirs, right? The money was divided, the business disappeared, and and they end up not using it in the right way. All the billionaires that we have nowadays in the world are self-made billionaires, the majority of them, right? Because we have still, as imperfect spirits, we have the tendency, and I mentioned this many times, we are lazy, general. So if we have the opportunity of not doing much, we are not going to do much. And if we have money to waste that we didn't earn with our hard work, we have a tendency to waste it. So again, we face the responsibilities. So those that destroy fortunes that could be used to help humanity are going to have to face the responsibility. And then Kardec finishes talking to us about not only that this is what happens, but God gives us endless opportunities, endless incarnations. The only guarantee that we have is that we are going to reach perfection. How long we're going to take to reach perfection, it's according to our free will and depends on each one of us, depending on our work, on our own journey. And God gives us at every moment the opportunities of receiving from the spiritual world, from the spirits that surround us, guidance, assistance. We receive messages, we have books, we have communications. So we have our inspiration, instincts, everything that helps us, that helps and assists us to make the choice of using those guidance and inspiration for our own progress. Again, is a personal choice, is the free will of each one of us. Okay? So we're going to go now into nature of future joys and sorrows. There's a lot of questions on this part, so we're not going to finish it today. You are on mute, Philip, sorry. Still on mute. Still on mute, Philip. Still on mute.
There you go.
There you go.
Do the joys and sorrows of the soul after death have any material aspect? Common sense tells you that they cannot be of a material nature because the soul is not matter. There is nothing carnal in those joys and sorrows, yet they are 1,000 times more vivid than those you experience on earth because the spirit, when freed from matter, is more sensitive. Matter stifles feelings and sensations.
Okay, so these are interesting concepts that the spirit brings to us, right? When we go back to the spiritual world, and we talk about joys and sorrows of the soul after the death of the physical body. They don't have any material aspect in the sense that everything of material, of earth-related matter stays behind. What does not stay behind, what goes with us, is our feelings and our sensations. So when we are attached to material things, we go back to the spiritual world and we miss those material things and we miss them dearly. So that's why you see a lot of spirits that end up obsessing those that are following the material inclinations that they had when they were living. So those that used to drink are going to associate with those that are drinking carbonated drinks. Those that abused sex are going to associate themselves with those that abuse sex here, and so on and so forth. Again, obsessions could be personal and could be just a share of interests. The obsession that is a share of interests and it's not personal are the ones that are easier to get rid of because you just have to stop. If you stop drinking, there is always someone else drinking next to you and they can move away from you. But if it is personal, then it becomes a more serious thing, and that's not what we are discussing here, personal obsessions. But what happens when you go back to the spiritual world is that we don't have the distractions of the physical body. What do I mean by distractions? Our physical body demands from us things. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to live. So we, even if our preoccupations consumes a lot of our thoughts, still the physical body have to distract us from these concerns that we have. When we go back to the spiritual world, we don't have to sleep, we don't have to eat, we don't have to have anything related to the physical body. Everything that stays with us is in our minds. So that's what can cause a lot of trouble for the spirits that are still attached to the physical sensations, to material things, and to moral vices, right? Anger, jealousy, hatred, all of these, they amplify in the spiritual world because, as they say here, matter stifles feelings and sensations. They come back in the spiritual world at full force. So sometimes that's why we read in the books of André Luiz that he goes to the spiritual houses of assistance, and there are many spirits that are in a sleep state in the spiritual world, because that's the only way that they can be treated and assisted for a period of time until they find themselves in better conditions. So these are spirits that are rescued from the lower zones because they are already in a condition to be rescued, but they are still in no condition to be themselves yet. So they need to be put to sleep so they can receive the assistance and the treatment until they can be awakened and start facing the consequences of their actions. So everything in the spiritual world, as they say here, they are 1,000 times more vivid than those you experience on earth. We have to remember that, and that's why it's important for us to try not to carry back with us to the spiritual world the inferior feelings that we are having. That's why Jesus told us, before you go and place a donation at the altar, go and reconcile with your enemies, because much more important than going to the altar of a church is to not leave any enemies behind us, not leaving anyone that we have issues with. And again, it's a two-way street, so we can only do our part. If the person continues to consider themselves our enemies, but we are no longer harboring any evil thoughts or any hatred towards them, we did our part, and we are going to vibrate at a different level, and they are not going to be able to cause us any pain or harm because they are vibrating at a much lower level. So that's what Jesus told us. Go and reconcile with your enemies, because then you will be free when you return to the spiritual world. Okay?
966.
Yeah.
Why do people often form unrefined and absurd ideas of the joys and sorrows of the future life? Because their intelligence is still imperfectly developed. Does a child understand things to the same capacity as an adult? Besides, their idea of a future life is often a result of the education to which they have been subjected, an education that urgently needs to be reformed. Your language is too incomplete to express what transcends your present existence. So we have to communicate with you using comparisons borrowed from that existence. As a result, you make mistaken images and figures of reality. As humanity becomes enlightened, its thought understands much that its language is unable to express.
Okay, so what the spirits are talking about here, our ideas of heaven and hell in the end, right? Why did we create the notion of heaven and hell? How this come to be, right? Again, we have experienced the so-called hell in our passages through the spiritual world, right? If we are evolving and we are imperfect spirits, that means that we have gone through the difficult experiences in the spiritual world, that we bring some recollections in our unconscious. And also, we have seen these spiritual guides appearing before us in the spiritual world or in our dreams, that appears to us as angels or enlightened spirits, surrounded by light, that we may have described them as angels or other similar qualifications, right? Because we have limitations in our understanding of the spiritual world, we created these imperfect ideas of what is the spiritual world. And that's how heaven and hell came to be, as an idea of something that we see suffering, a lot of suffering, a lot of punishment, and something that we imagine as being the perfect world, right? When we talk about the wonderful work of Dante Alighieri, right? When he talks about the divine comedy, when he talks about heaven, hell, and purgatory, that describes hell very well, describes purgatory very interesting, and this describes heaven very imperfectly because he had the experiences of hell and purgatory related experiences and no experiences of heaven besides some words that he have received. So for the mediums that experience contact with the more elevated spirits, they feel a state of how do you say that? A state of excitement or pleasure or a heavenly experience, right? And to describe that in limited words that we have are very difficult. And then we end up transforming this in this misconception of heaven that we have, right? Of an angel playing harp in a cloud. When what we really know is that evolved spirits are working incessantly, right? When we read Nosso Lar, André Luiz tells us that the governor of Nosso Lar has been working without stop since the creation of the colony 200 years ago, now 270 years ago or something like that. Because for a developed spirit, it's not work in the sense that we understand work here as something that is painful, that sometimes is boring. It's work in the sense of helping others because it's their second nature. So it's work to the ultimate objective of work, which is to serve. And of course, a spirit doesn't get tired, so he doesn't need vacations. He doesn't take time away. He's working all the time. So that's the characteristic of evolved spirits. And our misconception creates these evolved spirits that are sitting in the cloud playing harp, which would be extremely boring, right? Um, there are several jokes about heaven and hell that talks how heaven is boring and how hell is fun, right? Making fun because you find all the the bad or nasty people in hell, and you find only perfect people in heaven. And so our conclusion as limited and imperfect spirits is that where if you want to have fun, you have to go to hell, right? And if you want to get bored, you have to go to heaven, which is very far from the truth, completely different from what really happens in the spiritual world. And this is why Kardec asks why we have unrefined and absurd ideas of the joys and sorrows of the future life. Is our lack of understanding. Our intelligence is still underdeveloped. And he gives an example. Does a child understand things the same capacity as an adult? When you are going to explain something to a 4-year-old child, you are going to explain something, the same thing, different for a 10-year-old and for an 18-year-old, because their ability to understand is much different when you were 4, when you were 8 or 18. And the same thing with us. We are still in our childhood spiritually, so we have to adapt the ideas of heaven and hell according to what our understanding. Of course, the John Paul VI, the Pope, was the first one, the first Pope to say that heaven and hell are a state of mind, right? So even the church is starting to embrace the concept of heaven and hell not being a place, a physical place, but a state of conscience that we know in Spiritism that's what really is. Okay. All right. I think the next question is an interesting one. We are going to leave for next week. What does the happiness of good spirits consist of? Because it's a long talk, and I want to go a little deeper into that. Okay. So we're going to stop here. Let me say what we have here for the weekend. On Saturday, the U.S. Spiritist talk will be by Marcia Trajano, our friend from Tennessee, that is the host for all the psychology and spirituality podcast programs that we have every Friday at 7 p.m. And she's going to be talking about evolution and consciousness. She's a student of Joana de Angelis, and she has all her lectures are very good and related to Joana de Angelis. So this is Saturday, 11 a.m. through the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube page. Our study this coming Sunday is the Medium's book. It's the third Sunday of the month. Book club is on summer vacations. Our website has been renewed, and we have a new updated website where you can find more easily the access to our study groups, to purchase books, to have our YouTube videos. You can even ask for prayers. We have a prayer group every Tuesday morning, and you can ask for prayers directly for loved ones or for yourselves through the website, the new version of the website, okay? Check, it's www.sgny.org. Okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, thank you so much, John, for hosting for us this evening. Great class. And thank you, Philip, for reading for us tonight. And thank you, everyone who is here. We appreciate it. And thank you for participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks to be together for our studies of the Spirit's book, Book 4, Chapter 2, Joys and Sorrows, the intervention of God in rewards and atonements, and nature of future joys and sorrows. We are eternal spirits, and our intuition of God and our past experiences of reincarnation can be vaguely present. A soul nearing death may experience doubt, fear, and or hope, which depends on our moral and intellectual development. We should try, however, to let go of remorse or guilt and try to cultivate hope and goodness through our efforts and actions. God's laws apply to all of our actions. The outpicturing of our endeavors have implications. There is the phrase cause and consequence. We create our happiness or misery. God does not punish us. We have endless opportunities to receive guidance, messages, and inspiration. The soul after death retains vibrations and thoughts that may be attached to denser matter or activities while in the physical body. We can, however, study and educate ourselves before we leave the body and the physical plane. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all of our participants. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritus centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. And may we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.